Phil lights. Okay, so here we are, potting together, four corners for the first time in 3 years. What's up, dude?
What's up, Ray? I mean, we've hung out before, played basketball, broke bread,
Yeah,
done lots of over 100 podcasts together,
gone to a parade.
gone to a parade, but this is be the first time we won't be talking over each other.
Yeah, at least not for non-comedic value.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm excited if you're ready to get into it. In the last episode, if you want to call it, of Four Corners, we talked a little bit about um, some of the discomfort with additions the Nuggets may or may not have made yet. And since then, they've made a couple. We've won Dario Saric and Vlaco Chanchar. So just to kind of get into it, tell me, I know I'm the Vlaco guy. I think not the Vlaco guy. I'm sure there are at least a dozen of us, at least one dozen Vlaco guys in the Nuggets universe. But how were you on Vlaco kind of going into this year, especially coming off the injury, and just like what are your expectations for him um, based on his past and kind of his recent play?
Well, I think that one thing I've noticed about watching basketball for so long is that even when guys get hurt, if they lose a little bit of athleticism or, timing, you don't really lose your IQ. And he's always been a high QI player, which is what we like about him. So I think that he probably won't be in the regular rotation to start, but on like back to backs or if somebody's got a sprained ankle, we can trust him to go in there and give you good minutes. And we've always been so big on high IQ players, not just because it's what you need to win, but I also think it's important to have guys that know what they're doing around your stars so they don't get as pissed off. Because I think that when some guy like misses you wide open or takes a dumb shot, like you can roll your eyes and like let it go once, twice, three, four times.
Mhm.
But when it happens all season long, that's when people kind of like get sick of you.
Yeah,
And we don't have to worry about that with Flacco. He's
for
not going
sure.
to come in and just start chucking. So that's what I really like is like he's just going to be an additive to the team. If he plays poorly, he'll get benched and he won't complain. He'll be a good soldier. He's been around the team. This is going to be his fifth year on the Nuggets, I think. He was in the bubble, so he's one of the longest tenured Nuggets now. He was part of the seven. Set great screens in that game. So he's never really been a candidate for Mr. Nugget, but I think all diehard Nuggets fans love Locko.
That is so interesting because he, I think, does so much of what makes a Mr. Nugget without being Mr. Nugget. It's, I don't know if maybe there's just like a talent threshold you have to hit to still be Mr. Nugget. But as you're saying, he's one of the longest tenured players on the team at this point, and he's familiar with the system, and I think he makes Jokic happy. And one of the things we talked about
Which is
last
not
show
easy.
was I think it's easier than the nut.
You have to
Sometimes
actively like mess with him to get him pissed off at you.
I think Jokic in his heart is a joyous basketball player and wants to play a style that is fun and kind of free flowing.
Yeah.
I think that is what makes him happy. I think we just haven't tapped into that recently, especially with the way that I think the last couple of years have been really serious for Denver. The title year, absolutely. I think day one, it was we're walking in, we're doing this thing, we're focused, we're locked in. And I think last year a little bit as well is that like coming off the championship, I think the expectations were just so high that, how do you handle it as an NBA superstar? How do you handle it through Jamal Murray? All these sorts of things. I feel like the addition of a Vlatko and maybe we can get into it, Dario Saric, they represent just like an influx of guys who can play the way that Jokic is comfortable with and happy with. He's going to set great screens. you're never going to be in a position where he's standing on the wing, just like looking at Jokic with that. You've seen this from some guys' face where they're just like, he passed me the ball, right? And he clearly wants them to cut, all types of eye contact, all types of
Totally
like
correct.
movements. Yeah. And the timing is just not there. I think that collective IQ, I really agree it's going to be a big impact for Denver. For the very least, Jokic's mood. Honestly, Jokic's mood carries. I think that also dictates, trickles down to the rest of the team as well. So, um,
Absolutely. I mean, a team is almost always a reflection of their best player. It's kind of like whatever their personality is, that's just kind of how the team rolls.
yeah, yeah. So, I'm pretty. I also feel like the community, I think, there was a little bit of a sigh of relief when Shark was signed.
Yes.
I mean, I think we all expected Blanco to be back, but with Shark signed, it answers that question that we've been waiting on for a week, 2 weeks at that point of, well, are we getting somebody? It's that like the meme where you're like poking it with a stick, like do something. The Nuggets did something, which I think brought the temperature down a little bit. We're still kind of waiting on. Are you worried at all about the Russ process,
No,
about this stretching on in terms of just how long it's taking?
no. I mean, each day he's not here is obviously not good, but I'm not panicking. But let's get into that later. I think Saric is a fascinating piece to add because he's a good shooter and he's another high IQ player. He's a couple inches taller than Blanco, so he played small ball center for the Warriors last year on their bench unit, and it's just another high IQ player that I think can play with the bench and he can play next to Jokic if they want to go.
Mhm.
You could keep Mike at the three, put Sarge at the four, and now you have four shooters around Jokic. That's a pretty tasty lineup, in my opinion. Get a little weaker defensive, obviously, with Sarge instead of AG, but it's still a nice look to be able to go to. Um, Makes it tougher for people to double Jokic. You know,
Right.
Teams are not worried about leaving Aaron Gordon open. When Aaron Gordon hits threes, you're not beating the Nuggets. Like that's just usually how it goes.
It's a tough ad.
But I've always liked Sarge's game. Um, he was, I didn't even know this, but apparently he was like, the Nuggets really wanted him in the draft back when he was in the draft.
Mm.
Didn't have a high enough pick to get him. And I think they tried to sign him last year, chose Golden State. And what was interesting right this year was this is like, this was like, finally something in the win column for Nuggets fans because we wanted Sarge, but the rumor was not that he was going to go to another team in the NBA. The rumor was that he was just going to be like, I'm going to go back to Europe. So somehow the city of Denver was more appealing than, Barcelona or wherever he could have
Well,
ended up.
we heard this a lot when Gallinari was here. I think he really loves the Denver area. I don't know if he loves Denver specifically, like Denver the city, but at the very least Colorado, from like a climate and maybe just like how he likes to spend his time perspective, having the mountains there and all that good stuff, and that it feels to some extent like a European city. Um, I
You
think
think
that,
so?
well, that's what I remember him saying.
Oh,
And I think having lived in Denver, and maybe this is getting a little bit off topic, I don't know if it matches up with all the expectations that I would have in that comparison, but I do feel that, what I was getting to as far as like the ability to, Aspen being a couple hours away, and kind of as like a parallel to the Italian Alps, I think
I can see
it
that.
fits for certain NBA players, and I think it might be a good fit for Sharj. So I think he'll. I mean, and on top of that, the team culture. I can totally imagine the Vlaco, Charic, Jokic dinners.
Oh
When
yeah.
them hanging out and having that connection. So I think it's hopefully in an environment that he's comfortable in, but also like both socially and physically. I think he'll like it here.
Well, and I also think it's important to know where he's at in his career.
Mm.
He's basically I think he's either 29 or 30. So
Yeah.
he's on the back nine, but he's still not old or anything.
Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate that.
But no, he's never been on like a great team. He's been on the Sixers to start, which, as we all know, not made it out the second round since the early 2000s. Then he got traded to the Timberwolves in the Jimmy Butler deal. They were first round and out team. And then he went to Phoenix, where they did make the finals in the post-COVID year, but he got hurt, and so he wasn't in the rotation for that run, which is a sneaky big injury that I think kind of gets forgotten about in NBA history. They had a very good small ball lineup with him, where he was the center in for Aiton. You got Chris Paul, Bridges, Booker, and Cam Johnson around him. That was a killer small ball unit. When he got injured, they weren't able to do that anymore, and I really think that did hurt them against the Bucks. I'm not saying they would have won, but it was definitely just an option that hurt them. Then he eventually ends up with Golden State last year, who has championship players, but Golden State's been kind of a mess the last couple of years. They didn't even make the playoffs this year, so I think he clearly still wants to be on a team that's good and headed in the right direction. And playing with Jokic, he knows how good Jokic is, just from watching, and I'm sure he's met him before, being over there in Europe. But the Nuggets are a much better team than the Warriors right now. I
Right.
mean, we can say that objectively. So him coming in, knowing he's going to have a similar type role, but have a chance, at the glory. This is what Nuggets fans have always wanted. Is like we want to be an attractive enough team to we can at least get like these C tier free agents, you know,
Somebody.
right? And we can debate, how good you think he actually is, but it's like we didn't even used to get these type of guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I think there's a level of frustration with we all thought winning a title would change that about Denver. And in especially Jokic being here and Jamal Murray hopefully taking a leap and having all the talent that the Nuggets do, that would also and maybe even the city of Denver itself becoming a little bit more popular, a little bit more relevant on the national in the national context. Um, I always thought, maybe that would mean you get some of those like higher tier buyout candidates, some of the higher level free agents say like, hey, I could make 20 million over here, but I might take 17 million to be in Denver. But as it turns out, I still think that's not true. Uh, it's still it's still a tough ask, especially when you know that maybe the talent is a bit of a detriment for some guys that if you're we were talking about Bones Island earlier before the show, and if you're Bones Island and you come back to Denver, you're probably not playing. Like
Right.
even if you buried the hatchet, you really have no guarantee that you'll see the floor. And but if you go to the Wizards, you're probably going to see the floor. You're probably going to get some opportunities. You're probably going to get that chance to
Right.
even if you're not securing your bag here or wherever you might be, putting out enough tape to say, okay, well, somebody else is going to pay me the bag I'm looking for at that next stop. So um, it's progress. I think Shark is progress in that context. It's better than nothing where we were.
Yeah. Well, and I think with free agency, you have to remember, like, I don't think that most teams get exactly who they want. I think there's a lot of just sort of what is the market, who's available, let's make our list of like guys we want, and maybe it'll work out. But like, not every NBA player has winning as their number one priority. They're going to want to get paid. We
Mhm.
understand that. And then I think lifestyle has a big influence. We see that with the Heat and the Lakers every year, getting guys on minimum deals that maybe could have got more money to go somewhere else. I mean, Oklahoma City just paid Isaiah Hartenstein like almost 30 million a year. Are they getting him if they offer him 25 million? I don't know. The Knicks, I think the most they could offer him was like low 20s. I forget the exact number, but basically, like, there was like a cap that they could offer him.
Mhm.
And Oklahoma City had to, like, who it actually reminds me of? They're kind of in the same spot that when the Nuggets gave Paul Millsap 30 million a year. We
Yeah.
had to pay the money to somebody, but it made sense back then because it was a young team. Jokic wasn't on a max yet, I don't think, and Murray definitely wasn't. and they're like, well, we need to get better, and we need a veteran, and it's funny. I still argue with people like some like, oh, Millsap was overpaid. It's like
He was overpaid.
he was overpaid, but it's like again, is Fred Van Vliet overpaid on the Rockets? Yes, but he still helped them get better.
He
Like
did.
you need players,
It's a valid.
and I still think Millsap was a very important stepping stone
Mhm.
into us getting, where we needed to go. So I know I kind of went off track a little there, but it's
No, you're
like,
good.
yeah, I just think Sarge is a small win, but it's still exciting to me because I do think that there's some players that want to play in Denver, but it's never going to be as many as like Nuggets fans hope for. I don't know if they're ever going to fully change the narrative. And then I don't want to go down this rabbit hole today, but the cheapness of the ownership group and the practice facility also plays a factor into this. Gary Harris basically said as much in his
Yeah,
comments last time he was a free agent.
that's definitely a factor. Like the environment, or not the environment around the team, because it's not like the. I don't think it's a toxic environment, but the physical
No,
environment that you're in, I think that also matters. Like, do you have a nice
we don't
office?
win the margins as much.
Yeah, that's fair. And I know they're working on it. Like, uh, that's.
Yeah.
I know they've got like.
I'm working on my bachelor's degree too, Ray.
Me too. I guess we all are
Working on it.
working on. Well,
I'm sorry, not you.
no, we're all working on it. We're all trying to be the best version of ourselves. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the Crockies want to redevelop that entire area and not have it be this like awkward. There are stadiums here and nothing else.
Are we just
Part.
letting out our frustration now because of
Yeah.
other things that have happened in
Uh,
the Nuggets verse?
well,
We're getting the Rockies straight.
This is actually a Denver thing. I haven't been in many cities where the downtown area, I know that's not exactly downtown, but like the core of the metro area is, uh, it's all like, it's the two stadiums, it's the amusement park. It's a set of things. And I'm like, oh, it's different. It's just, I wish there was like housing here and stuff to do and restaurants. And I think they're working on that. I'm assuming. But
I see what I mean.
well, but because to your point about like the nightlife, how do you build a strong like nightlife sort of community?
Hmm.
I think it runs through those things. Is like how many people in the Denver area actually want to live and be downtown,
Yeah.
and particularly be around all that, all around Ball Arena,
Well,
around the Broncos
a
Stadium.
lot of that stuff is closer to Coors Field. So
Hmm.
I really do think that's another reason why the Rockies do so well tennis wise. I mean, they do have a beautiful ballpark, but I think being right by, Larimer and Blake Street and Rhino now, there's just so much going on over there all the time that there's a lot of people there and they're like, oh, might as well catch a game. Whereas yeah,
Yeah.
Ball Arena, I wouldn't call it an inconvenient location, but you're right. It's right across the street from the Herrera campus there, and
Hmm.
there's all the parking lots, and then the
And then the highway.
amusement park that doesn't really do anything for you. So
I should go to that amusement park though. I will try to get over there at some point. But yeah, yeah, anyway,
we're doing like deep dive Denver City stuff now.
Denver reviews. Yeah, but
All the Europeans listening to this are like, the hell, this is
well, if you're listening and you want to come to Denver, learn a little bit
Ray will
more.
show you around on his bike.
Sure, yeah. I'll have a second bike for you, and we'll have a good time.
Keep up.
But so we've added Blanco, we've added Charge, uh, probably Russ.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Um, how are you feeling about the offseason as a whole? Just like if that is how it goes, are you are you satisfied? Are you disappointed? Are you surprised?
I will say that if we get Russ, I will be satisfied because we added two bench pieces and we drafted somebody who we're excited about, even though that's a sad situation that we'll get into a little bit. Um, the team is going to be different next year, and as mad as the majority of Nuggets fans were that we lost KCP, after having about a week to think about it,
Hmm.
I really do understand more where Calvin Booth and the organization is coming from because even though he's good and even though we have proof of concept, there is a chance that it goes bad. He's in his 30s.
I mean, re-signing him.
Right. If we re-sign him to like a 3, 4 year deal, there is a chance that he just gets progressively worse. I mean, he wasn't good against the Timberwolves.
Hmm.
Christian was better on defense against Ant. I'm not saying Christian is going to be better than KCP next year, but he's starting his career. He's only going to get better or be where he is. He's not gonna. Yeah, like it was rare last year that he was just like awful. I mean, yeah, he had games where he didn't hit shots, but when you're as good defensively as him, you're always going to be playable.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Nuggets lose all that much with losing a guy who's in his 30s, who's the fifth starter. And then, we can get into a little bit, later, summer league, Julian Strother, he's a guy that can score the basketball. So I think it gives Malone multiple looks. I'm going to miss KCP. I thank him for his time. But when you're this deep into the tax, you cannot afford to make mistakes.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's still all right in front of them. Jokic, Murray, Porter, and Gordon, they're the core. If they can stay healthy, they already have good connection. I think they all like Christian. Um, I was listening to What's in a Game podcast recently, and they asked Matt Brooks who was the most torn up about the loss in Game 7, and he said Christian Brown. He was like,
He has been winning this whole time,
he's a very
up until
competitive
now.
guy, and I know Malone loves that.
Hmm.
So I'm excited. It's going to be different. There's going to be growing pains, just like there was with Peyton this year. Um, but I do think it's sometimes things can get stale or figured out, and it hurts losing KCP. But I'm optimistic that that won't be like a fatal loss.
We have a fan recommendation for Devin Booker to Denver.
Oh God,
I don't know how that's gonna happen. I don't know why, but
I should not have told my wife that I was going live.
well, I appreciate the thought. I have no interest in that, but
We're gonna move on.
yeah, well, I do with KCP. I actually don't even feel like it's not even like a dice roll. It's really just a scale, of him on a 3 or 4 year deal. How much of that deal is he playing below that value point, and how much is he playing above? I could see him playing above this year, but next year, the year after, I think it's just kind of like a matter of, I don't want to say it's a matter of time, but we're already talking about a guy who puts up 10, 2, and 2 a game
Right.
in starter level minutes. I think, the floor is, when we're talking about can Christian Brown be better than KCP this year, the floor is not as high, I think, as people imagine it might be, especially because I think they can be a little bit more dynamic in terms of, Christian size, I think is very helpful, especially when we're talking about maybe he's not exactly the shooter that KCP is, but also KCP is not a high volume shooter. He shot 40%, but on how many shots? Again, 10 points a game. It's not too many. And Christian loves to attack the basket in a way that I think not many players do. So I think he's going to be able to draw Denver more fouls, attack the glass a little bit more. Christian's impact as a rebounder, I think, will be underrated. So I could, whether he's like intrinsically better or not, I could very easily see him being a more productive player than KCP was last year. Doesn't mean I still don't love KCP. Doesn't mean I wouldn't like to have him back. Just $22 million is a lot for your fifth starter when you're in the position that Denver's in. So
Yes.
um, overall, I'm not too upset with where Denver is off-season wise. And I mean, we can get to that. There's a little sadness, darkness, my old friend. It's creeping up on me. But um, we've got basketball that's happening. We've got a little international ball. I don't know how much everybody catches different things in different capacities. There's so much going on in terms of international play, looking at the USA and Canada and France, who France has been really interesting to me as a team that I almost feel like has the highest ceiling
Hmm.
for a team in international play, just by the very nature of who their best two players are. Um, I don't think they had it figured out yet in their friendly game versus Serbia yesterday. That isn't to say they can't, but one of the things I think they really struggled with was just getting Jokic the ball. Not Jokic the ball, sorry. Force of habit. Getting Wembanyama the ball, I think was a bit of a challenge for them. And I'd almost, because they're in a transition phase with also generationally, some of the players that have traditionally been there for France kind of moving on from basketball. Some of they're introducing some new guys. Bilal Koulibaly, I think, is also another player who adds a little bit more dynamism to that team once he gets himself figured out. But um, I would love to see Point Wemby. I know Wemby is like
What?
7'4" and everything, and it's not traditional, but here's hear me out. I think that you don't have to. I think their biggest challenge is just getting one the ball
Is the Colorado Heat getting to you?
a little bit. It's very hot, but don't blame me for that. It's very hot right now.
I'm not blaming
It's
you. This is one of your worst takes in a while.
oh no, I don't. I don't think it is. I don't have that taste. But well, maybe okay.
Speak for yourself.
The Volvo thing is not working. It's not going well. Okay, I'm holding these stocks. It's like Dogecoin right now. But the thing about I think the core of France and for their team and for their hopes is that Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert can be their best two players. And for that to happen, for one, Wembanyama he has to have the ball, and you can't do what I think France did in that game is just go away from him. And to be fair, to credit Serbia, Serbia did a great job of of when that second quarter started. They made it a really big effort to be more physical and disrupt what France wanted to do. They fouled a lot. Serbia did foul a lot. That could come back to bite them in another context, but it didn't in that game. Um, but thinking about how you even attack Wembanyama, he's so long. I don't think there's any way to navigate around him. You really do have to. You're better off getting into his body than you are going doing anything else. But how do you counter that if you are France? I mean, if you can't get Wemby the ball, just start him with the ball and let him. They've got shooters, they've got Fournier, they've got some big physical players who can, create contact and kind of play off of those two. But I think a Wembanyama, Gobert, pick and roll feels a lot. I'm not saying that Wemby is a point guard, but looking at their other options, who else are you going to play through? Are you going to play through Evan Fournier? I think that's a little. You can. It's not that I don't think he can do that, but I think the best use of him in use of his gravity is still like off the ball, in that sort of thing. So um, I'm still interested. I'm still high on France. They did get blown out a little bit, but um, I think it's just some tactical things that they have to work out. But did,
Well,
did you catch USA Canada?
no. So three things.
Okay,
Full disclosure, I did not catch the Serbia France game. I was
okay,
en route. I was driving. But I can tell you three reasons why Wemby is not playing as well as he did in the second half of the season with the Spurs. So number one, whenever we start a conversation about international basketball, I feel like people always go straight to the what is gonna help, what is gonna like make this guy better. And
hmm
so everybody was like, oh, Wemby and Gobert playing together, and there's no defense at 3 seconds, their defense is going to be crazy. Like, fair point. I'm not denying that. But look at the other side of the coin. Teams can pack the paint on them, right?
Yeah.
So it's harder to score in international basketball. The other thing is, France doesn't have very good guards. You said they have shooting. They have Fournier, and I guess they have Nick Batum. But outside of that, I think most teams are like, well,
They were good.
we're not really all that worried about the other guys. Let's not let Wemby beat us. And then the third thing, which I think is most important, if you remember the season, Wemby was much better in the second half. And yes, some of that was because rookies just figuring out getting older, but they put Wemby at center. So he had more space to operate. The first half of the season, they put Wemby at the 4 because their theory was like, oh, he's a young guy. We don't want him to take a pounding, right? We don't want him to guard fives. Totally get it. But he wasn't great because when you have a traditional 5 next to him, the spacing isn't great. So now what does France have? They have Gobert on the floor. And as we know, Gobert can't shoot. So when you're stacking international basketball and you're playing next to Gobert, it's gonna be really difficult to score, and their
Mhm.
guards stink. So I'm not surprised that Wemby struggled, and he's got to guard Jokic on the other end, or at least help out.
Mhm.
Like, I think Serbia is a bad matchup for France, straight up. I'm not. I get why you say France has potential, but they got a lot of stuff to work out because we already have a full season proof of concept that Wemby's much more effective when he's the 5. But Gobert's your second best player. You can't not play him.
Yeah. I mean, I
You got
think
to figure it out.
okay, first of all, I do feel like they will come for you for not watching the game. However,
Sure.
Serbia did pack the paint on France. That is kind of an accurate assessment of what happened.
See, I'm clairvoyant. I don't even need to watch. I already know what happened.
Well, um, the internet will be the judge of that. So, but playing Gobert and Wembanyama off the ball together feels even more like an uphill.
Counterproductive.
Yeah, it feels like even more trying to have them both be off the ball feels
It's
even more
hard. There's no
counterproductive.
great solutions here.
I would much, at the
They're
very
going to have to win
least,
games 0-4 Piston style with defense.
that's true too. I mean, to your point about Serbia being a bad matchup, a big part of why I think,
Serbia's also really good.
yeah, Serbia was very good. Bogdanovic played very well in that game in terms of just navigating. It's tough to score on Wemby. It's tough to score on Gobert. You know, the amount of length and athleticism that France has of just using just craft and just having a good game in that sense. But also, I think for Jokic, there aren't that many players who can get that physical with
Mhm.
Wembanyama, and Jokic just happens to be one of those few guys. So I will also credit Serbia with how well they played and the potential that they have. I think is similar, if not higher, to be one of those teams that we end up seeing. I think at the very least in the quarterfinals, in the semis, I should say. Top 4 is what I'm talking about. I totally see them being a top 4 team.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I hope they put the ball in Wembanyama's hands more, just because
Come on.
I don't think they have a better option, you know. And I think it gives those other guys who maybe they're not the best inbound, uh, maybe not the best at getting that like entry pass into the paint or what have you, but maybe they can find their own niche
That's kind of crazy to me that
off
you
the
have
ball.
trouble getting the ball to a guy that's 7'5".
Well, Serbia overplayed him to that degree.
Okay.
Like there were multiple players
Like
who,
asking you to get it somewhere else.
yeah, I think that was a big part of it. Is that it's not just that. Like I don't want to put it all on France. Is that Serbia's game plan very much was literally in that second corner was don't let him get the ball.
They basically stacked the box against the best player,
Yeah,
to use a football term.
yeah, is what I'll say.
All right.
USA Canada, that also happened. Jamal Murray played.
You played.
He played.
I did not catch the game. I know Nuggets fans are upset that he didn't play well.
He played. I mean, I
Okay.
think that's like he didn't get hurt. I don't think it was an amazing game from him or from from them as a team, but I think it's a new context for Jamal. I think that and that's interesting to see because so much of Jamal's career has been with Jokic and in a very specific framework, a very specific set of responsibilities. I almost think it could be good for him, regardless of what happens for Canada as a team, as long as he's healthy. I think what could be good for him, yeah, I would like to see him. It would be great if he had shown up for Team Canada in the best shape of his life. He does not look like that, but from a tactical, how do I like learning to play around other guys, I think could give him um, a chance to experiment with his own dynamism. How do I function on a team where it's not Jokic trying to constantly feed me the ball? I just kind of have to like figure out how to create space and create gravity and do things off the ball, which I think you could use some work in, honestly. How do I
Hmm.
be a good contributor how do I space the floor properly? How do I be a good defensive player in a context that's a little bit different from when you don't have that same familiarity and all the responsibilities are set up behind you that he has in Denver. So I think it's an interesting opportunity for him. He playing Team USA was a little bit uncomfortable because Anthony Edwards he was back, and a lot of what he did in that playoff series against the Nuggets is kind of what he took as an approach in Canada versus Team Canada, I should say, in terms of just trying to press Jamal Murray off the ball, which is also something that, yeah, it's awkward to watch right now, but I do think is good for him, for Jamal, again, to have that get those reps in of like, hey, this is something that you really could be working on. You're going to run into guys, especially if we want to get you, if we want to get Jamal off the ball more, which I think is a plan that the Nuggets have, something that you're going to make a concerted effort for. How do they? It's going to put him in positions where he is matched up with bigger players. Um, so he's going to figure that out. Uh, Outside of that, Team USA is very good. I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, last time we talked about Jamal, I sat here and made a bunch of excuses for him. So I'm going to do that again because I think that
Okay.
I don't care about this game. It's an exhibition game.
Hmm.
Jamal Murray can't get up for the Hornets on Tuesday night in February. He's
Well,
going to get up for Team USA in a game that means absolutely nothing. No.
he should. I mean,
Would I have liked him to play better? Sure, but he doesn't have Jokic. And for everybody that says like, oh well, ideally yes, we want everybody to be versatile and be good without Jokic and all this stuff. But you know what? Sometimes it's okay to have a guy who fits your system and is good with your players. We've seen Jamal Murray be the second best player on a championship team. Did we see that last season? No. Nuggets fans have a right to be upset about that. I think he can get there again. We all do. That's what we want to see. Now, theoretically, is the best version of Jamal still good without Jokic? Yes. But we can't pretend like that isn't the best version of him. Those guys have a special connection.
mhm.
People that really follow basketball know that. Zach Lowe talks about it all the time. And so the fact that he's not as good without Jokic, I don't hold it against him. And if you want to call me a homer, that's fine. I just don't think he's ever been that dude. And yeah, he was great in the bubble, but it's like when people say they're mad at Jamal or like disappointed, I'm just not there because to me, he's been like this level of player for a pretty long time now. And this is just who he is. He's just slightly below all-star level. He usually raises his game in the playoffs. This is the first time he really didn't. So I'm not that worried about him, but I do agree that he needs to step it up for the Nuggets next year to be better. But if he has a bad run with Team Canada this year, I'm still not going to be like, oh no, Jamal Murray's going the wrong way.
Well, I think it has one big implication, and that's financial. You know,
That is true. That is a big motivator.
talking about, what is his next contract going to look like and the negotiations between him and the Nuggets. It's tough. We would all love it if Jamal was like if Jokic was LeBron, then Jamal was Dwayne Wade, where it's like you didn't have to worry about it. He could win a game on his own, and he didn't necessarily need Jokic, and he could be in any context. He is still that man, and he's always fulfilling the expectations and responsibilities of a second star throughout the year entirely. And he never threw things on the court. All these other things. Then it would just be easy. Then it would be like, okay, here's your 5 year, $250 million, whatever that max, super max, whatever he wants. I think that's how it is with Jokic. It's really easy. It's here's your money. We don't have to ask questions because we're not worried about it. The last like year and a half, um, talking about everything I just mentioned, it's not, you don't blame a guy for getting hurt either.
Right.
We don't blame Daron for getting hurt, but after two missed playoff runs, he plays 63 games, I think. I want to say low 60s, and then he plays 59 games. So that also like that isn't a it's a downward trend in games played, which is also not a great look for a guy who he's not over the hill, but he's at the hill. Like he's on the hill. This is supposed to be the best version
On the hill. I like it.
he's on the hill. This is supposed to be the best version of
Ryan
him.
is on the hill. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I want him to be, we all want him to be back.
Yeah.
It's just we also saw Jalen Brunson, who, players will can have that debate of like, who would you rather have? Who's better? Who's more consistent? Who shows up more throughout a year? Who doesn't throw things on the court? But who just
He was
took,
having a bad day. I'm with that one.
okay, well,
Still wasn't
he
cool.
just took an AAV that's like in the high 30s as far as like millions of dollars a year. So how do you navigate all of those? How do you put all of that into a negotiation and not have Jamal? We're not trying to offend him. Who's we? It's not me. I don't think Calvin Booth once is going to say is here to lowball him, quote unquote. I hope he doesn't. He's not Casey because he's not KCP. There are lots of guys on the Nuggets who I think Aaron Gordon, I think might be a guy who in a few years we're like, do we want to pay you $30 million a year, 25, $28 million a year in your early 30s? It's going to be a question mark. But for Jamal, he's so important to what Denver does, and he's so core to what success Denver has had. We want him to be here. We all want him to be here. Everybody in Denver, I think, wants the best for him. So it's a little bit uncomfortable, and I think this Canada run can assuage a lot of those concerns if he plays the way we would like him to play. And that was a friendly, so I'm totally willing to like keep the book open on whatever that story is going to be, whatever that's going to be written. But it's something I'm keeping an eye on. That's what I'll say.
That's fair. I'm gonna make one last excuse for him, and then we can move on to summer league because
Okay.
we're 40 minutes in. We haven't gotten to it yet. If I was an NBA level player, I would hate playing with Dylan Brooks. I would just be miserable.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know what his feelings on Dylan are, but that guy has never met a shot he doesn't like. He plays like J.R. Smith, but hits shots at the rate of like Josh Smith. So
And well, I think it's the volume. I think it's the volume that he can produce at, and on some level, it's frustrating to play with. But knowing that, like, he will keep going and keep producing, like game after game
he
after
keep chucking.
he will keep. I mean, yeah, he'll keep
Thinks he's
chucking.
Kobe. How many players in NBA history have had their team release a statement at the end of their contract to say he will not be back? Remember the Grizzlies tweeted that about Brooks?
Yeah,
That was so disrespectful.
I mean,
Then he got the learn Chinese buddy, and then he got 20 million for the months.
yeah. Well,
And then he went 3-1 against the Nuggets next year.
that happened.
Which brings us to
Why?
Nugglife.
Why? You just really? Setting me up for emotional failure.
I'll let you set the table with this one because I know this
Okay.
one hurt you.
Okay. So, Nugglife, what is it? Is it this like ever present and overarching sadness that we just continue to experience time and time again? Is it this modular thing that can grow and change over time? And Nug is can Nug both be Will Barton getting hurt literally every year after being asked to play a ton of minutes at a position where he has a 40-pound disadvantage? Maybe. Is it also like championships?
Is it tactical?
Well, maybe. But is it also bad luck? Is it also is it also Michael Porter having another back surgery after the first two? Is it you losing Jamal in that same year? Is it all these things that we
The
can talk
apron being created right when the Nuggets are trying to start a dynasty.
right when it's our turn to have a super team?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it all these things? Um, I kind of feel like maybe it's not Nug life. Maybe that's just life.
Well, so I don't think it has a clear definition. I think if you asked 100 Nuggets fans to define Nug life, they would give you a different answer in a different way. And to me, I don't think it's here. I don't think it's fully back.
No.
To me, Nug life was when Jamal went down. That was Nug life.
Yeah.
Holmes going down. So yeah, well, I guess we didn't address it yet. The Nuggets' first round draft pick, Daron Holmes, in the second half of the first summer league game last year, tore his Achilles. He's going to miss the entire year. Very sad news for him and for Nuggets, the Nuggets fans everywhere. We hope he gets better. Um, but there's a different level of expectation with him. You know, I always personally think it's silly to expect rookies to come in and be productive right away. Sometimes they are, but it's really hard to do, and it's really hard to do on a good team. So I think it hurts the depth, obviously,
Mhm.
but Vlatko's coming back. They signed Sarge. DJ's back, who's, as you've said many times, is fine if he's your third center, which he is.
I did say that.
So they should be able to rest
might,
Jokic more this year.
I might be shifting on.
It does hurt, now Malone just has less options. But as far as Nug life goes, I'm gonna go big picture with you for a sec. You know how people say like BC AD before Christ after death?
Hmm.
To me, 2023, was my favorite Nugget season of all time. They won the chip. We are now AC after championship.
After championship.
And so Nug Life died when KCP stole the ball from the Heat and dribbled out the clock, and we won our first championship in the city. And now the Nuggets are forever champions. And I know we want more. We all do. But the Nuggets have a title. They can never take it away from them. And I can continue to scold the sorry ass Suns and Jazz fans until they get on our level. Because right now, they ain't got shit.
The Jets are doing a good job, I think, with their rebuild.
Hey, we don't talk positively about the Jazz here.
I'm just honest. I don't care enough to like.
That's right. That was the last summer discussion. You don't care about Utah.
I don't care. I feel bad. I feel bad for them.
Why?
Their lake is drying up. All these other things, like but I'll be honest. I don't believe in Nug life.
All right.
I don't think it's real. I don't think like this idea that Nuggets fans and the Nuggets experience specifically is just uniquely horrible or like that bad things happen to us consistently. As I think that's just life. I think bad things happen to everybody.
Right.
And you can't the idea that we were going to go through an entire season without any injuries it just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Honestly,
But you understood the term because of years of history of never winning, right?
yeah,
You know the Nuggets were the
Nuggets
most
fans.
tenured professional sports team in America, like most seasons without a championship until they broke
Yes.
through.
I feel
I
like
don't
it's
know who
just
it is now.
decades of internalized low expectations.
Sure.
Sure, but I'm coming in fresh, I'm coming in
Yeah.
from not that. I became a
And
Nuggets
like
fan.
I said it's dead.
when
I'm
Buffalo.
I'm AC now. I'm after
I
championship.
think it was never alive.
Fair enough.
And so all that is to say, it is a bummer. It's very disappointing that Duran is not going to be able to play with the Nuggets this season. I was a little higher on him in terms of having an impact. I think he is good at basketball, which I think is really the biggest. You grow a lot, I think, as a player from your rookie year to year two, year three, year four, etc. Um, and I think the big thing for me is, are you good at basketball? Like when you get here, that's not always true. Guys have real limitations. Sometimes they're defensive, sometimes they're in rebounding, sometimes it's guys not, they can't shoot. I don't know, maybe for whatever reason, however they got coached, however they got brought through college, they were never really presented with that opportunity or demand that, hey, you need to be able to shoot too. And I think especially this is true for guys who are 6'10", because for most of your life you're playing center. Oh, were you six? You were probably like 6'6" at 13, things like that. So you really didn't have to grow in a certain way. And oftentimes there are high school coaches who are just like Michael Malone in that they're not that interested in the development of the players and their long-term futures, that they're trying to win basketball games. And so I understand if you do show up to the NBA not having a completely well-rounded skill set, but I think Deron kind of did. So all that is to say, it hurts me I don't even, day one, like, that's painful.
Sucks.
It's really difficult. Uh, so I wanted to put that in front of before I say this, but Denver has like 5 or 6 options at that position, at the four especially, that I think are all kind of tenable. And I think that's why you do it. I think that's why you bring it. That's why you have Blacko and Charge, and you still have Zeke, and you have Peyton Watson, and you have PJ Hall, and you have Hunter Tyson. Like it's all these guys who can play the 4. So it's not to say that I'm not going to miss Duran or that is not unfortunate, but I don't think it is going to hold the team back necessarily in the way that some people might think. If we were talking about a position of very limited depth, we were talking about an injury in the point guard rotation, that's huge. An injury in the center rotation, that's huge. But, well, particularly because how many point guards do we have? It's really Jamal, and we'll see if one of Pickett or Alexander become that. And centers, it's Jokic and kind of Sarge. So, hello, darkness, my old friend. But let's put that in a box. Let's put Hello Darkness, my old friend in a box and set that aside. Because I actually think it's gonna be okay. That's all I'm gonna say.
I do too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some positives from the game last night. So, Julian Strother, he was getting shots up out there.
He got some shots up.
I think he was what, 10 for like 27 or something?
7 for 19
7 for 19
from the field.
I was way off, but
Yes. Not the highest field goal percentage, 36%, 36.8. 30% from three.
not afraid to shoot, but only a -2 in a game that the team lost by 10 points. I still think he was a bright spot. I thought he showed an ability to get downhill, get to the rim. He had got 10 free throw attempts, 8 of 10 from the line, which is very good. Something the Nuggets sorely are lacking. Um, he did hit three threes, 3 out of 10, not a great percentage, but you know, one thing that the Nuggets sorely have been lacking the last, ever really since the whole Malone era, honestly, is just they don't get up a lot of threes.
That is true.
And so Strother's willingness to shoot is going to help a lot just with spacing. And then, we saw he had some big games last year. He's really going to be able to, have games where he gets hot and like we win some games maybe we're supposed to win.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to swing some games this year.
And like 80% from the line, that's a good indicator. I mean, if we are following this adage of free throw shooting being an indicator of projecting shooting potential, and 3 for 10 from three, you only got to make one more, and you're at 40%.
And the other thing is, with summer league, yes, we know it's worse competition, but he's still like the main guy on the team. So it's like they are probably gearing towards the defense more towards him. Once he gets in the regular season, he's going to be playing off Jokic, off Murray, off other guys on the bench still, but he's not going to be like a team going to be like, oh, we need to shut Julian Strawman. He should get better looks.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll be able to knock him down next year. Um Trey Alexander, I thought he played decently well. He looked comfortable out there. Um, not a crazy good game, but for your first game against NBA level competition, nothing to sneeze at.
I think he's um honestly, I feel like I'd be lying if I was saying he was right in line with Jalen Pickett for the backup point guard role. He's in front. I think.
I think everybody agrees there.
Yeah, especially Michael Malone. And it's not to say, obviously, Pickett is the one who started. And I also, you know, I don't want to say just because Pickett went, shot 20%, that he
Mhm.
is going to, the summer league is just a set of games. Sometimes you shoot 20%. At the same time, you know, the gravity for all of these moments is so high that I think any one display can it can mean a lot, or it can mean it's variable in how much you want to take away from it, is what I'll say. So I think Pickett can play a lot better. Obviously, I think Hunter Tyson as
Well, I hope
well.
he doesn't play any worse.
Yeah, not a team low, but minus 18 on the game, I think is not exactly what the team is looking for. It's I just need to see enough few. I'd like to see a few more games before I make a true distinction.
It's
Because
fine.
does Trey shoot 50% from the field every game? I don't know. Does Jalen shoot 20% from the field every game? I don't know. And for guys who that is like their hinge point, I think that is, Christian Brown, when he was playing in Summer League, I didn't really care what he shot because you knew he
Right.
wasn't necessarily,
Wasn't his role.
yeah, that's not necessarily what his calling card is going to be. So if he makes any shots, that's kind of a bonus. But for guys like Pickett, Alexander, and Hunter Tyson, who also did not have a great game, even though, more so than Pickett, I think Hunter Tyson is a guy. I think he can play. Uh, at the same time, sometimes you don't shoot well. So,
Yeah.
and, it's funny because summer league is one of those situations where you can take a ton away from a guy. Like a Jalen Pickett can have a really negative performance, and you think trade him now,
Right.
get rid of him, it's over. And another guy can have a negative performance. For me, that's Hunter Tyson, where it's like, give him a little grace, give him a little time. He'll work out. Um, but that's kind of where I am on them.
Yeah. I mean,
How many games are they even going to play?
yeah,
That's another question.
Hunter was a team worst, minus 22, but he did still make a couple threes, 4 for 10 from the field, 15 points, a couple rebounds, couple assists. Not a good game, but not like eyesore. Pickett was just awful. 2 for 10, 5 points in 29 minutes, almost 30 minutes. It's just 4 assists. Um, it's disappointing, man. Um, I can't tell you one skill that he does really well. Um, he has a good attitude. I don't see him sulk a lot, which is good. But it's a bummer, man. I was low on the pick last year. I just don't see flashes. I don't see how this gets better. Usually I would say some guys just need reps. I'm not saying he can't be good one day, but he was a fifth year senior, man. It's not like this is some like young guy oozing with potential.
Mm.
He's already probably what, 23, 24 years old. Um, it's looking bleak, man. I would be surprised if he works his way into the rotation this year, the way he's looked so far. With Hunter, I will say one thing in fairness to Pickett. I think Hunter's job is a lot easier. What he's being asked to do is play the three, right? On the wing,
Hmm.
off the ball, catch and shoot. He's gonna have games where he catches it and he can hit shots. Yeah, obviously the defense is still tough. You got to defend NBA level threes, but I just think when you're a point guard, the job that you're asked to do is so difficult for young guys. We always hear about, oh, it takes like 7 years for them to master it. He's not. He doesn't have 7 years. We need a point guard now, and he just doesn't look like he's going to be able to do it. So they better sign Westbrook or sign another vet that knows what they're doing. Because if that's the backup point guard in the beginning of the season, that's rough.
That's interesting. I mean, because well,
And sorry to cut you off, but the last thing, we've seen that Malone is not afraid to play the two-way guy ahead of the guy under the real contract. And Trey
this is
Alexander
true.
is under a two-way contract.
No, that's pretty much what I was gonna say. Is like I I don't know what would he overly do with him at that point. I don't know what the
Grand Rapids YouTube.
maybe. Maybe it's tough. He has an uphill battle, I think, just because he is an older player coming into the league, and because he didn't play last year, and
Yeah.
because all of that is time he probably should have been. Not to say that he wasn't working, but these are reps he kind of needed to have already. So it's almost like that much more of a tall task for him. And Trey is right there. Trey's right there with a little bit more length, a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more Murray-ness. If you like Jamal Murray, and Michael Malone
He
does
can get
like,
his shot off easier too.
yeah, he has a game that's a little bit more. Uh,
NBA ready?
if Dario Saric
No.
is a potential understudy for Jokic, Trey Alexander is much
Yes.
more of a potential understudy for Jamal Murray
He could be a poor man's Murray one day if things go well.
than Jalen Pickett,
Yeah.
who I think is more of like an understudy for Andre Miller,
Yeah.
which I love Andre Miller.
Right.
And I would, if Andre, if
This
he
is
came,
so
if he
disrespectful to
came
Andre
down,
Miller, though.
if he came down at, I don't, is he 40 at this point?
Yeah, he's over 40.
He could, hey,
Run this
would I
one.
rather have him or DeAndre Jordan? I might take Andre Miller.
Oh dear. You
Uh,
really don't like DJ.
no, I don't dislike DJ. It's just he could be a coach. When you're talking about what I'm looking for from him, when he got to Denver, I was like third center, cool. It's been a couple of years, and he's that much older. And we're talking about every roster spot is valuable. I want DJ around. I love having him in the locker room. I love having him as a presence on the team. I think he does all of that very well. I don't really, if he's playing, it's a problem.
Yes.
Something has gone wrong. How I can't how do I list Sharp, Flacco, Z, Duran, unfortunately. All these guys who can play backup center. If it somehow ends up being DeAndre Jordan, something went wrong, is what I will say.
Right.
Do I believe in him once a month? Once a month, 20 minutes. Once a month. He'll have a good game. I promise you. I really believe that. He will have a good 20 minutes a night. If you try to play him 2 nights later, it's not going to be good.
You know what's crazy? DeAndre Jordan has more value to the team off the court than he does on the court.
That's what I'm saying.
And it sounds like I'm being negative when I say that. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. He genuinely keeps guys loose. Everybody talks about how funny he is.
Mhm.
He knows so many other guys in the league, and anytime they go to LA or Houston, like they can go to his house.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he helps with the vibes. Um,
So if you needed a roster spot,
well, remember last year we talked about our idea of like how they have the two-way contracts, how they need to add like the one vet way contract where it's like you're way out, you're like half step out of the league.
yeah,
And it's like,
The player slash coach.
right, it doesn't actually take a roster spot. You're not allowed to play in the playoffs, but you can play like in emergencies.
Yeah, that's what LeBron's going to be doing.
No, he would never do that. But
He wants to be coach of the Los Angeles Lakers.
yeah, I don't know. I doubt it.
He can get.
That's a very high pressure job. I mean, you're saying while he's still playing.
Who's gonna fire him?
Sure. So, is there anything you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Well, we did have a question actually,
Okay.
and we always appreciate questions. Um, Girl talks back. Girl talks ball. Asks us, curious if you guys have any more insight about the Malone Booth differences of opinion and how that might shape the season now that Daron is down. So that's a great question. I honestly think it makes Malone, I think it kind of simplifies their situation, giving him one less young guy to bring along as much as
Right.
I don't wish it were that way. I don't think Malone is losing sleep. I'm sure he wants what's best for Duran. I'm sure he likes him, and I'm actually really excited to have seen Malone be more involved in the summer league process and getting in with these guys earlier on and in engaging with them. I think that is a step in the right direction for one thing I've always wanted Malone to do a little bit better is I know Malone loves his guys. Like I know Malone loves Jokic. I know Malone loves Jamal. And I'm sure they feel that. Like they feel that Mike Malone would run through a wall for them. I always feel like you go down the roster and those guys feel like Malone would run through a wall for them. I'm sure like if you're in like KCP, Jeff Green, some of his favorite players, they're very secure in that support. But if you're a Michael Porter, if you're, or even lesser than him, especially a young guy coming into the league, I think it's tough. It hasn't always felt like he wants you to be there. And even with Jalen Pickett, I kind of feel this like I don't think if you read between the lines, there feels like a lot of points where Malone, if he was GM, Pickett would not be here. And I think if we can see that, the players can probably see that too. And look, and I'm not saying I've played at an NBA level, but even just playing in organized basketball, just talking my own experience and my experience with teammates I've had is like you kind of know when a coach likes you or not. You kind of know when a coach has your back, and it empowers you. Sometimes the fear of God that you have can keep you in line, right? It can keep you from taking that bad shot. It can keep you on your toes defensively. It can keep you working on the boards. But on the flip side, sometimes there is an opportunity where like, oh, I need to hit this shot or I should, but you also kind of know like your coach, you're on thin ice with him. And I think that makes it tough for your own confidence.
Like JR with George Karl back in the day.
Yeah.
It was hard to get JR's confidence down, though.
Yeah. It was very enduring. But so part of that though is I understand how guys like that end up in the NBA is because you're going to have so many coaches in your life from between middle to high school to college to all the way to that highest level. And not all of them are going to fuck with you.
Right.
Not all of your coaches are even going to be competent.
Right.
Surprise, surprise. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes coaches make mistakes. Sometimes coaches are wrong. Sometimes they're not perfect people. And you have to accept that and be able to move through that and still get where you're going as a person. And I think we all experience that even in the workplace. We've all had a boss or a manager or a superior or whatever it might be. You're like, I know they're my boss and stuff, but they're kind of an idiot, And but you still have to show up. You still have to do your job. You still want to have good takeaways from that experience.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough for. So all that's to say, I think it's good that Malone is on the ground floor a little bit more in the season with the young guys. Maybe they can start to feel like they have that backing and that encouragement, and I think that's a good sign for their just development as players. If you are a Hunter Tyson, if you are a Pete Watson, if you are one of these guys that Malone's been with you from day one and not just showing up when you're okay. Now you're with the team. Now you finally get to have these interactions. Um, but to tie it back into the Malone Booth differences of opinion, I don't know if Duran going down changes all that much.
Well, let me jump in here. See, I think this question is fascinating because specifically regarding Duran,
Hmm.
I think this actually makes it easier because pretend he doesn't get hurt. I'm not saying it's a good thing he got hurt. That's not what I'm saying. But if he's available and he
Yeah.
starts racking up DNPs, that's when Booth is like, what the fuck, dude? We don't always hear about this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But now that won't be a discussion. He's not playing because he can't play. He's hurt. But overall, when the whole roster, you already brought up Pickett. That's going to be the one where it's like, how much is Booth going to be like angling behind the scenes for him to be playing when Malone's job is to win basketball games? And look, one game sample size, I know, but if Trey Alexander plays better in summer league and then plays better in camp, Malone would be a fool to play Pickett over Alexander.
Hmm.
Even though some people said they were mad last year that Gillespie played over Pickett. You
That
know,
was weird. That
I,
was
I
being
understand that,
weird. Yeah.
but I don't know if Malone's petty enough to be like he did that just as an FU. No, he definitely thought Colin gave them the best chance in those minutes to win games. And if he thinks the same thing about Trey this year, I believe he's going to do that again. And you know, I don't have enough insight into the organization to know like who has more power.
Hmm.
Malone's been there, I think, longer. Obviously, Blue's only been a GM a couple of years. Traditionally, the GM is above the head coach, but I don't think Malone is worried about doing anything to upset anybody else. It's his team. He's going to coach the way that he believes is the best way for the team to succeed next year. And if we're being honest, though, Malone has done a pretty good job usually of being introspective and saying, here's what I need to work on. And
Hmm.
I think he even admitted at the end of the season press conference that he didn't think he did a great job this year, right? He
Yeah.
thinks that maybe he could have eased up a little bit on the going for it every night and like playing some of the young guys more. So we'll see if that actually changes next year because fans are fickle. We're going to complain after a loss.
How could
We
you
want you to
play?
win and develop at the same time. Do you know how hard that is to do?
Let Pickett have a bad game. People already hate him.
Now that's what's fascinating is like I hate when coaches do that shit. It's like, well, here you go. He played 30 minutes. He sucked. Well, it's like, did you put him in position to succeed? Like, I know you can only coddle the players so much.
That's
It's
not my
like,
job. I'm like, it kind
yeah,
of is.
yeah, no, it's absolutely their job. Um, you can't you can't have your feelings in it, right? You might not fuck with the guy as you said earlier, to put it so eloquently, but if Pickett starts playing better, Malone can't be like, oh, I don't like this guy, or I was already out on him. This can't be like an ego struggle.
Yeah.
It should not ever be about Booth and Malone being right or wrong. They're on the same team. They're trying to help the Denver Nuggets win basketball games, and I think they're smart enough to understand that they can have different philosophies and different
Hmm.
approaches and different types of players they like. But at the end of the day, I don't think that should be a distraction. It's something for us diehard crazy fans to talk about. But at the end of the day, I don't think Malone wakes up thinking about, oh no, am I going to piss off Calvin? Or, am I
How can I
am I
find ways
am
to
I
blame
doing
shit on Michael Porter today?
am I doing what he likes? It's like he'll do what he needs to do. But if we can sort of end on a positive, the injury got me thinking about Michael Porter, actually, how you just mentioned. He missed his first season in the NBA.
Hmm.
He got to be on the bench and watch everything because he was injured. Daron gets to do that now. So,
Is he going to be a rookie next year?
right, if he doesn't play a game, he'll be a rookie the following season. So
Hmm.
it's obviously really tough coming off an Achilles. You're still just kind of trying to get your bearings and, figure out the NBA game and you're going to be a rookie. But look at how good Chet Holmgren was his rookie year.
Yeah.
He didn't play his first year because he was hurt. Now, I'm not saying Duran's as good as Chet, but I really do think that if you come into the NBA and you can't play that first year, just being around the guys, learning the lifestyle, it's almost like if you're a freshman in college and you just take all electives that first semester, at least you get in a routine, you get in a rhythm.
That's fair.
It might not be the real tough classes.
Hmm.
You're not playing in the games yet, but you're getting acclimated to the lifestyle before you have to perform. I
Hmm.
think a lot of rookies struggle with the whole transition of being away from home or away from college or whatever. And now you're playing a higher level basketball. You got all these different agendas going on. Like,
Distractions.
right. And we know that Duran is a Booth guy for sure, right? He wanted him all along, sent him home, said, don't go work out for the other teams, traded up to get him. So he knows that he still has the organization's backing and he wanted
Yeah.
to come here. They asked him what players does he like look up to about his game after. He said
Jokic.
Jokic and Aaron Gordon.
Yeah.
That was great. Even if he's just like lip service, I love to hear that stuff. So
It also speaks to me, like in how he plays. Like
yeah,
they think the game, and I think Duran also thinks the game.
I think that it's definitely a bummer for him and it's a bummer for all of us this year. But long term, I still think this could be, I mean, saying it's a positive is a stretch, but like everybody has to face adversity sometime in their career or in their life, even outside of basketball. He's getting his adversity now at the beginning. Look how far Michael Porter has come.
Yeah.
He said on multiple podcasts, like he's not, he a lot of people could have quit by now. He could have retired, but he kept going for it. He's doing well now. So I'm sure Duran's dream is to play in the NBA, and that dream's going to be put on hold. But he's got a lot of support around him, and we're still rooting for him.
He also doesn't have, sorry, not Duran, but I think Malone. Tying back into the Malone Booth differential, there aren't that many guys on the roster anymore now that Booth has had a couple of years to like fill the pipeline who aren't Booth guys. So if Trey Alexander works out over Jalen Pickett, well, it's still a Booth guy.
Right.
It's not like Colin Gillespie, who, I don't think
Seems like Tim Conley guy.
Booth, yeah, he seems like he's a Tim Conley guy. And let's be honest, Colin was never going to be. Yes, he was probably closer to a well-rounded finished product, but he also never really had that.
He was never going to be able to guard anybody.
He was never going to be an NBA regular. He would have to be so good.
He was a traffic cone.
He'd have to be Chris Paul.
Right.
He'd have to be a Chris Paul level player just to be in the NBA.
Yeah.
So all that is to say, if it's not Jalen and it ends up being Trey, Booth is still kind of winning. That's still a hit for Booth. If
If it goes
it's,
1 for 2.
yeah, it's fine. If it's, Charge Booth brought him in.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, I don't know, Flacco, he did extend him. He is extending him. So,
Yeah.
to some degree, I think Booth is invested in him. I think the same is kind of true with Zeke in the sense that he doubled down on him. So, I stocks up for Zeke a little bit with the injury. I think
It's kind of weird, right? They drafted your replacement, and now it's like, hey, what's from
actually,
the camp?
but actually though, yeah.
Hey, we need you.
Well, I think Zeke does things that I think they have a lot of guys who are similar but different. Zeke is probably the most different, and I think that he's the best defender out of the bunch. And especially now that he's not going to be playing center, like he's not going to be. You're not running pick and rolls through Zeke. You're not running pick and maybe you could pick and pop, maybe, but he's not going to be asked to have this like offensive fulcrum role, which they tried to force him into this past year. He's mostly just going to be. I envision him being out of the way and just shooting threes, which I think is a simpler role for him. Um, the shot, I think shooting is one of the few things that you can show up with and not have a shot, even at all, sometimes. And within 3, 4, 5 years, you've developed a reasonable. You can learn to shoot.
Yeah.
You're not capped on that. It's not an age thing. It's not like um, in some ways I felt like they asked him to be Kenneth Reed this past year in
Okay.
how they wanted him to play offense, which that's not him. He's not a bad athlete, but he's not a Kenneth Reed level athlete. He can just kind of stand away and shoot threes and play defense, and that's okay. And I
Right.
think he'll stock will rise a little bit, and then hey, then you still have him on like a 3 year, $8.5 $8 million a year type deal, and that's very affordable, for filling out your roster. Um, I think PJ Hall, Hunter Tyson, those are guys who, if they're in the back of your roster and they're some of the guys who are just filling in. AG needs a night off, so everybody kind of
Yeah.
steps up and fills in. I think they're players who can manage. I think they'll be fine in the regular season. They'll bring energy. They'll run. They'll work hard. All that stuff. Um, I think that sort of Booth, as much as the I'm taking away the guys I don't want you to play feels petty. It has Malone in a position where you can't have that differential now because it's almost all his guys.
Hmm.
Yeah, is how I feel. So I'm optimistic about that too.
Yeah. We still got a lot to look forward to. Um, next time we talk, I will be in a land
In
far, far away.
in the Great North.
And, there'll be more to talk about. We'll have more summer league games to talk about and hopefully a backup point guard by then
Are you going to be in perpetual daylight? Is that what's going to be happening?
for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Excited
Uh,
for some bowling?
yeah, it should be fun. We're gonna go bowling later.
Four corners, first time bowling.
Oh, no problem. Girls Talks basketball. We always happy to thank you for asking questions. We always appreciate that as well. And if you made it this far on the podcast, we appreciate you listening, whether you're in the audio format or maybe you're appreciating us on the same couch for the first time. It always means a ton to us. And yeah, you can find Peter at Bucket Since 88. I'm at Ravon Hackshaw on the interwebs, on the Twitters, on X, I guess. It still doesn't, I don't like it.
I
Still,
still call it Twitter.
yeah. I still type in Twitter, but was that a good idea?
I don't have energy to talk about that right now.
I mean, maybe changing it was so controversial that we're all upset about it, that we're all talking about. You know what I mean?
It really doesn't bother me. It was dumb, but it's
Okay,
like
let's move on. Let's close the show.
nobody has ever corrected me when I call something when I call.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for listening. We will see you next time. This has been Four Corners, and we're out here. If we get on the stream, we'll see.